So you're one of the prominent, I would say even the faces of the world of cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, that whole entire world. Let's dive straight in and ask, do you consider yourself a Bitcoin maximalist?
I think that the way I really look at it is I work backwards off of what is the maximalism that I believe in. And the world that I believe in is kind of an automated world that is run on these open, decentralized protocols. And what we ultimately do is we return sovereignty and individualism and kind of personal responsibility and liberty to people over institutions. And what we end up doing is we end up kind of taking what has historically been a very analog or physical world economy and geographic rule, and we then kind of put it in the cloud. And this digital economy becomes the prevalent way that we all conduct commerce, communicate, et cetera. And so it's less about any one single technology to me, right? I think that it's pretty stupid for people to almost in a way put an inanimate object up for some sort of obsession. To me, it's much more about the ideals, the ethos, and the most rational and likely path to that kind of end result or that world that I think is at this point just a foregone conclusion.
So the distinction there, and maybe if people don't know the terminology, maximalism is basically saying, I really think this is a good idea. Like, if you prefer a certain kind of diet, you could be a keto maximalist, saying like, this is probably, maybe it's not 100%, but probably the diet that's healthiest for humans kind of thing. In the same sense, Bitcoin maximalism is saying, of course we don't know, there's a lot of uncertainty, but this particular technology seems to be the best representations of some set of ideals that defines progress in the future. But you're drawing a distinction between sort of cult-like obsession about an object of any kind, whether it's keto or Bitcoin, and just sort of believing that a technology is the best representation of a particular set of ideals. And you believe that sort of this moving into the cloud, both the distributed nature of it, but also just the digital nature of it, is something that's going to be a positive step for humanity.
Yeah, I would even take maximalism a step further. And it's not just the kind of singular viewpoint of this is the best. It's also an element of it's anti everything else. Right.
Okay.
So, take keto, for example. The keto diet is not only the best diet, all the other diets are bad.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's a very binary view of the world. I think that what's probably most misunderstood about, let's take Bitcoin as a specific example, is that most of the people who are labeled Bitcoin maximalist, they would be open-minded if they believed that something else came along that was a superior technology or had a better kind of probability of achieving, again, that ultimate vision. I think where there's this controversy and kind of clashing of ideas is that the Bitcoin community believes Bitcoin is the best way to do that and has very specific arguments as to why the other things are not.
Yeah.
Right. And so what ultimately ends up happening, which is very weird in the investing world, right? It's unlikely that you and I are going to sit down and you're going to be like, Apple stock is the best stock and there's no other stock that's worth anything.
Yeah.
Right. And then also it's very weird if you said to me, this stock is worth zero and that's where everything that I own I've put on a short on one single company, right? There's diversification. There's much more kind of probabilistic thinking in finance in general. When it comes to this specific world of cryptocurrency and kind of digital assets, if you will, is there's two main groups of people who are trying to build two very, very different things at the onset. But when you unpack it and you start to spend more and more time on it, you realize they're actually trying to accomplish the same thing in two different ways. So Bitcoin is seen, I think, as a digital currency, right? Kind of the idea that this is going to ascend to become the next global reserve currency. It's a programmatic, kind of transparent money. And it's essentially just 180 degrees difference than the inflationary, non-transparent fiat currencies that exist in the world.
Mm-hmm.
You then look at kind of everything else, right? And you have a lot of smart contract platforms and various things that they're all going after, right? Ethereum with kind of the world computer approach, and you can kind of go down the line with all their other arguments as to what they're trying to build. I think the big difference just comes down to innovation versus security. And when you simplistically look at it via that lens, you actually understand where both people are coming from.
When you say security, sorry to interrupt, do you mean financial security, or do you mean like literally the security of the particular cryptocurrency?
The technical security of a blockchain. So when you look at, let's say, Bitcoin versus Ethereum, right? Bitcoin has decided, and that community has decided, security is the number one thing that you have to optimize for. So decentralization over everything else in terms of transaction speeds, cost, anything that you could come up with that is something that would be important for a currency. The number one thing to optimize for is security. And as we have seen with a lot of technologies, right, Facebook's Libra, or now what's known as Diem, is a great example. Not having decentralization is susceptible to the nation state. And so a lot of these other platforms and blockchains, they say security is important, but it's not the most important thing.
Right.
We believe there's a trade-off between, a little less security and transaction speed or composability or whatever it is. And so take Ethereum as kind of the second largest community in blockchain by market cap. It was created because somebody wanted to, or a group of people wanted to do something on Bitcoin. They felt like they couldn't do it. And so they said, hey, we're going to go create something that has these smart contracts that we can then go do here. Again, this is technology, right? And so the tribalism of like, you're right, you're wrong, to me is a little childish, just in the sense of like the market is going to decide what is most valuable. And then when you go inside of that community, like there's a lot of dumb ideas people are trying to build around Bitcoin. There's also a lot of really, really great ideas that people are trying to build around Bitcoin. Same thing in the Ethereum world. And so what you end up getting, I think, is the tribalism really comes out of the idea that there's a ticker price that is attached to all of this, right? If you go back in history of technology, venture capitalists didn't sit around the table and yell and scream at each other in this like religious zealot way, right? Because you bet on one type of cloud computing platform and I bet on another one, right? It's just the market's going to decide we're both going to work on it and try to make ours successful. Here, I think that the sensitivity, and mainly it comes out of the Bitcoin community, is that a lot of this is being funded not only by venture capitalists and kind of professional money managers and asset allocators. There's also this element of including the retail investor and the public. Mm-hmm. And so whether it's through ICOs or some other forms of capital raising, there's arguments for it, saying, hey, look, this now gives kind of the little guy some sort of access and ability to do it. But there's also arguments against it. Some people say, hey, it's easier to dupe them and it's easier to run scams and kind of all this stuff. And so ultimately, I think that crypto is this like arena of ideas. It is literally the war of attrition. And what will end up happening is 10 years from now, you and I will talk and we're going to say, well, the market said X was valuable and Y wasn't. And so all of the tribalism from between, here and there, it's fun, it's, engaging, whatever, but ultimately it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, because the public is involved, so there's a lot of personalities. And so a lot of times we focus on the extreme personalities that do a lot of maybe, pardon the French, shit talking. And so we kind of focus on that, but that's not necessarily representative of the communities involved.